I'm Graham McGeary, President of Seahorse Victoria. My guest tonight is Hildred, National Program Manager for Pride Training, part of the ACON group. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. And I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you further about the program that I lead here at ACON.
Training is quite important, and of course, Pride training is part of Pride in Diversity, Pride in Health and Wellbeing, and Pride in Sport. And so how did the broad overview of what Pride training is?
Pride training, our little blurb that we use in our marketing is very much around we're here to build the capacity, the knowledge, and the confidence of our clients when they are dealing with people of diverse sexualities and genders, and very much about improving the health and well-being of the LGBTQ plus community, in particular in health settings, but also just in general settings in life. And so the program's been around since about 2017, and it was started with some funding that was to create some alcohol and other drugs inclusive practice training. And it's basically grown from there. So we were once a part of the community health and wellbeing division within ACON, but about 2 years ago, we were part of a change within ACON, and we moved across to the ACON Pride Inclusion programs. And so, as you mentioned, that's Pride and Diversity, which helps workplaces, Pride and Health and Wellbeing, which focuses on the health sector, and Pride and Sport, which of course focuses on the sports sector. And so we're a little different from the other three programs. So they all focus on a membership program, whereas we are just a fee for service. And so we work as a general social enterprise for ACON. And so we work with a whole range of different clients and deliver a whole range of different training programs to whoever and whoever needs and wants the training, basically.
Before we sort of get into more detail about it, what drew you to be part of this Pride in training and the broader aspect of LGBTQ plus?
Good question. So I've worked in training and teaching and education for sort of well over 20 years now. And I was working in a sort of a corporate learning and development role. And the organization I worked for was one of the sort of few organizations in the beginning that was very much in favor of marriage equality in Australia. So I got to lead a couple of campaigns around sort of working in favour of marriage equality, and I had the opportunity to work with Marriage Equality Australia at the time, and really enjoyed that work, and really sort of felt that I wanted to do more of that. Just sort of working for a not-for-profit, and so when I saw this opportunity come up at ACON, it was very much a natural step for me and a natural calling for me, sort of being part of the community and coming from sort of small town New Zealand as well, not having the best, not the worst, but not the best coming out as well. I just very much wanted to be a part of making that world, our world, a safer and more inclusive space for people of diverse genders and sexualities. And I feel like I've really found my place and my home here.
So you're really responsible for the development of the different courses and training aspect.
That's correct. So, I mean, I work with a fabulous team, and we have our off-the-shelf training options as that you would sort of see on our website, and that consists of about 18 different training programs altogether. So we have 8 facilitated training programs, and so that includes so whether it be in person or online via webinar. And that is a mix of our introduction courses, which run for 90 minutes, our awareness courses, which run for 4 hours, and our inclusive practice series, which are all day 7-hour sessions. And then on top of that, we have our e-learning suite of training programs as well. So there are 8 different e-learnings. We've got our introduction course is our most popular, but we've also got some courses around sort of trans affirming practice in the workplace. We've got working with sexual assault or suicide prevention within LGBT plus communities. And something that will become more
Mm.
popular, I think, in the very near future is asking questions around sexuality and gender. So those are sort of 4 questions which we are hoping that the ABS and the census will include, and that other organizations moving forward will also ask those vital questions so that our communities can be counted.
Sounds an extremely comprehensive suite of programs that you've got in there. But what sort of background data you mentioned about taking from the census and things like that? But what sort of research goes into developing the different training packages?
We hope that there will be more data coming from the census next time and in the future. It's the data is limited. I think that that's not a surprise to anyone in the community that it is really limited, but it is starting to be sort of there's more of it is coming, which is great. So we rely on, there's some really popular sort of data sets out there from Private Lives 3, for example, but we're also lucky enough that the other 3 membership programs in the Pride Inclusion programs do have their index and their surveys, which are completed. And so we're lucky to be able to rely on that data as well. So the AWEI, for example, gives us a lot of data about what's happening in different workplaces in Australia. And then, within the team, we've got people who do content development, and so the research is a big part of that. Something else we do is work with our clients to customize the content as well. So we don't presume that we know everything that everyone else needs to know. We want to be able to work with our clients so that their learners are getting information that's relevant and important to them. So we do work with clients to get that sort of specific information across in the content as well. Working at ACON as well, there are subject matter experts across sort of a whole range of different programs. So whether that be aged care, for example, or sexual domestic family violence, etc., we can sort of lean on those programs and those teams to sort of get extra information as well and create that customized feel for different clients, which I think is a really valuable offering that we can give our clients and the learners as well.
In Victoria, we just recently had the state government through the Department of Family Fairness and Housing launch a trans and gender awareness campaign, sort of mainly for social media, but spread throughout Victoria. So, being a national sort of organisation, how do you tailor that to say suit different states and the legislative support that you may or may not have?
ACON is traditionally or typically New South Wales based, and I'm physically here on the land of the Gadigal people as well. But we do have a national reach, and so again, sort of being across what's happening in different states at different times is really important. And working with those clients specifically. So we've done work with different organisations and universities, etc., in Melbourne. So making sure that we are including information that's relevant, that's data sets that come specifically from those states or those cohorts as well, is really important. So we do what we can and rely on a certain amount of research. But we're happy to lean into and collaborate with different organizations and teams and people. Again, just getting this information out there is the most important thing. So we'll do whatever we can to do that.
So, you're impacting in every state and territory?
Yeah, I mean, predominantly it's definitely New South Wales, probably followed by Victoria. But we've done some work in down in Tasmania, for example, across in WA, and certainly Queensland as well. We've been doing a lot more work in Queensland recently, and we do regional work as well, which is really important. And we've got a couple of people within the team who are from regional New South Wales, for example, so they know the importance and the value of getting this information and training out there as well. So we're really happy to sort of make the effort to get out to those areas as well, and really make an impact for those communities, because it's probably more important or vital that this sort of information and this sort of inclusivity can spread to sort of the more remote areas as well.
Different states and, as you say, regional areas, what sort of feedback are you getting about the quality of the training that you're providing and the impact that it's having in those areas that you are providing the training for?
We do collect a lot of data. So we, of course, as part of training, we do evaluations and questionnaires or surveys at the end of each training, and the results are overwhelmingly positive. And I think no matter what area we're in, the results are really positive. I think, in terms of general rating, we are over sort of 9 out of 10 for each of the courses. And then we also have a good set of data around the sort of increased understanding as well from the training. So it's been really positive, and it's getting more popular as well. So I think that element of word of mouth has been really important and valuable for us. And so more and more people are sort of coming to us and wanting to do more training, no matter where the area or where they are. They can see the importance of it, and I think going back to the data as well, like, as we were sort of saying, there's limited data out there, but the data that is there clearly sort of says that LGBTQ plus communities are still facing stigma and still facing barriers in everyday life. And I think there is that general understanding that the way to fix this is to get people to be sort of more aware and better educated, and more confident and more comfortable in dealing with LGBTQ plus community members.
That's sort of as a broad overview. Now, let's sort of maybe delve into a little bit specific with the other Pride in sections of ACON there. So, Pride in Diversity mainly deals with businesses and organisations from an employment point of view and the way they interact with the public, I suppose, through their employment. So, what specific type of training do you do for Pride in Diversity and its target audience?
So Pride and Diversity do have a couple of training courses as well, which they deliver as part of their consultation or the membership. And so if the organization is looking for something more specific or something more customized, then that's when we would be able to step in and deliver that training. And also we have, as I mentioned, a sort of a suite of e-learning options for training as well. And so, for example, in the corporate settings, we have sort of, I think I'm safe to say, the world's first trans affirming workplaces e learning. So, very much about preparing the workplace for someone who is affirming their gender. So, if a colleague is affirming their gender, organizations can complete this training, and it just really sort of prepares everyone to create a warm and welcoming and inclusive environment for their colleague and their team member. So it's actually made up of 4 modules. So the first 3 modules are to be completed by everyone. And there's an extra, a fourth module, which targets sort of the managers and the people and culture team, for example, and better prepares them for what they can do as well to make the this journey more inclusive and more affirming for their colleagues.
You mentioned there about the module to do with managers and things. As they're the people who, I suppose, the philosophy of the business at stake with the way they handle their staff and their customers. What sort of feedback do you get from them, and what do you observe of how they've benefited from that training, that module?
Good question. I mean, the feedback has been positive. I think that it's quite, the training is eye opening for a lot of people. There are things that they probably hadn't considered or thought of, so they do find it really helpful, and it's really sort of practical in the advice and tips that we give throughout as well. So the feedback has been really good. We did develop this particular training with Pride and Diversity, so we very much had those subject matter expertise in sort of LGBTQ plus inclusion in the workplace to sort of work alongside us and sort of give us the sort of the relevant information and the data, but also provide that extra set of eyes in terms of reviewing the content before it went live. We also worked with sort of 4 tech companies, so including so Google, Meta, Amazon, and Canva, all sort of they actually helped fund the development of the training. So we had the opportunity to get feedback from them as well. So we were able to sort of tweak parts of it to make sure that it was going to be relevant and easily understood by the learners. So we were in a really sort of strong position to set this up to work really well. And that's what the feedback has been, is that it's working really well and that it's been really helpful.
I suppose from my point of view, in just everyday life, I really have very little issues with people. I've sort of been involved in a community group outside social support and been very well accepted for just doing the things that everyone else does. Not there to be an icon of, say, the trans world or anything like that. So, is that sort of an emphasis on the way you do it, train? To sort of say, we're not there to be an icon. We're there to just say we're ordinary, everyday human beings.
Definitely, there's an element of that. And firstly, well, there's nothing wrong with being an incidental icon, which I think you might um, but yeah, I think there's a real element of just like a sort of a human approach, and this is just a human experience. And we all experience gender, we all experience sexuality, and that's something that we really try and get across the line, is that it's not specific to one group of people. We all have these experiences. It's just that it's more obvious, and this particular set of people might need some extra support and some extra love and some extra understanding to make that journey or that more sort of safer and more inclusive. It's such a simple idea that it's just a human experience. So we really do try and highlight that, and we even have a little part. We have a number of case studies and a number of sort of people or characters throughout the training, and one of the examples we give as well is talking about spotlighting, and how that's not necessarily a good thing, and that it shouldn't come down to the few trans or sexuality and gender diverse people within your organization to do all the work and to be the face of everything. So to have allies and other people do the work is so much more important and so much more valuable.
Let's move into the health and well-being area of LGBTQ plus things. What are the main aspects of the type of training that you're providing for the health and welfare industry?
It's an interesting sort of sector to work at. I mean, obviously, it's huge. I think the advantage is that there's now sort of a good understanding and awareness that there is sort of a certain amount of stigma and barriers that the LGBTQ plus community faces in health settings. So that at least we're sort of approached, our clients have that understanding, and that's often why they come to us, because they now know that there are issues that need to be addressed to make sure that their practice is more inclusive. So that's at least a good place to start. I think it is such a big beast. Sometimes they've got some very old sort of data systems in place that sort of don't allow for more inclusive practice. When it comes down to gender, they might just have those two boxes for the binary genders, for example. So being able to sort of work with them and make them more aware that, yes, whilst you may be limited with, the systems that you have in place, that doesn't mean that you have to be limited with your personal interactions. So I think just making people more aware of the situation, what their clients may have gone through, and the extra sort of health barriers and challenges that they might be facing, but also really just making it a personal experience. So to be able to change the way you word things, to not make assumptions, to be able to change your mannerisms so that don't shout across a waiting room. Like make the conversation more sort of private, or just use a quieter voice, for example. There are a number of really sort of simple ways that can make that personal interaction a much more inclusive interaction for LGBTQ plus patients in health settings in particular. And so I think once we sort of get across that line,
Mm,
then we'll see this
mm.
data that it'll switch, right? I can see you
What,
smiling. Is
what,
that you have this
yeah,
experience?
one of the things, yeah, well, I'm in the category of being older now and retired, so that aged care sort of is one of the big issues, I suppose, now of the LGBTQ plus community, it doesn't matter whether it's sexuality or gender identity, is aged care is becoming a significant area to provide training for. So, what are you doing in that area?
Yeah, such a good question and so valuable, and it's something that I personally think about as well. And the federal and state governments are
Mm,
doing work to make sure that aged care providers are actually providing more sort of inclusive care, and there are extra steps that those providers now have to undertake to be able to sort of tick that box to say that they are actually LGBTQ plus inclusive, which is great. So we've always had an inclusive practice for aged care sector as a facilitated training, which has been really well received. But yeah, so about a year ago, working with one of the local PHNs, we actually developed a aged care inclusive practice for aged care sector e-learning as well. So that's available on the website as well. And so we again just sort of go into a general little bit about general awareness. So obviously we cover things like different terms to make sure that they've got the right language and the right inclusive language to use, but then also why this training and this sort of visibility is important, and then specifically into aged care and what that's going to look like. And it is going to be interesting because we've got a growing LGBTQ plus population, which is getting older. We've got people who are HIV positive, which is it's not the death sentence that it once was. So we've got people, living healthy lives that happen to be HIV positive who will be in aged care sort of environments in the near future. So making sure that we've got aged care
mm,
providers who are, a
mm,
aware of that, but then b knowing how to like safely and confidently and comfortably interact with their clients. Is going to make a real difference for them, but also, more importantly, for our communities as well. And like I said, it's a growing population. I imagine I will also end up in an aged care facility, and I would really appreciate it if someone is sort of aware of the challenges and the journey that I've had as a gay man, but also if I've got different health needs as well, knowing that they exist, but also how to address them as well. And I think for the trans and gender diverse community in particular, it's just that extra level, it's a level up from that. And it's really going to be important that people understand the trans and gender diverse
mm,
community and the challenges they have and how that might change.
mm.
But yeah, just being able to sort of really sort of respectfully interact with those people and provide that safe care will be just so
And
important.
because that sort of touches upon, that personal interaction and obviously, there's been a lot of aged care facilities and other facilities that are run by religious institutions, and that creates some issues about I want to practice my faith, which might for other people say, "Oh, that sounds rather biased or bigoted." How does that training sort of, you know, or counteract that sort of activity?
Yes, it's a really it's sort of an interesting aspect to consider. Obviously, we know we have a history which sort of has conflicts with sort of religion
Mm,
or faith-based organizations in the past,
mm,
but we're definitely seeing a change within the Pride and Health and Wellbeing team, for example, and their awards that they have. There were a number of faith-based organizations that won awards and have shown great sort of an increase in inclusive practices and general knowledge. So the future is looking bright despite no matter which organization it is, which is really good. But when we approach our training, like we very much set up the training as we are here to change behaviors, not beliefs. So we're not there to try and sort of change someone's religion or what they generally believe. What we're there to do is just to make them aware of the different situations, the different journeys that people have had, these different human experiences, and really change those behaviors so that they are, first and foremost, not damaging, but very much working towards a much more inclusive, safe, welcoming, just warm environment that, as a human, we should be able to easily do when we're dealing with other humans.
Well, that's quite wonderful to hear that because it is a concern, I know, amongst people I've spoken to over the years of that there. But maybe moving on to another area of slight controversy, and of course, sport. Um, the training that you provide for sporting organisations, what impacts is that having?
Yeah, at this stage, unfortunately, we haven't had many opportunities to work with sporting organizations as our team, the Pride training team. But I know you've had Bo on the program before, who heads up the Pride and Sport program. And so the Pride and Sport program do a lot of great work with a lot of different sporting organizations, whether they be sort of the local community-based organizations up to the professional levels as well. But I do see in the future that the Pride and Sport and the Pride training teams will work closely together. I personally think that there's real value in getting sport on board and being sort of more generally LGBTQ plus inclusive. And the reason for that is, Australia is such a sports fanatic country. Like, Australians love their sports. So if we can get some of these sports players who are held up as heroes, whether that be right or wrong, who are held up as heroes to be more sort of actively LGBTQ plus inclusive and sort of actively being an ally to our communities, that kind of role modeling will be so important for all generations across Australia, whether they be young, whether they be old, whether they have different faiths or religions or beliefs. If we can get sporting heroes to be behaving in a sort of a more inclusive, but also sort of modeling how allyship can be and should be, then it's only going to flow down through community to the general community, which will then make it a lot safer and more inclusive for LGBTQ plus communities across Australia. So I have great sort of hope, I guess, that we can work with the Pride and Sport team more and get more
Well,
training out there and get these role models.
there's a lot of optimism in what you're saying about the programs that you provide. So leading on to sort of just looking at maybe not just the near future, but maybe a slightly longer term future, what do you really see as the biggest benefits from providing training to all these different organisations? Whether it's a community sporting group or extremely large business. What's your optimistic? Or is there an optimistic view of the longer term future?
It is optimistic. I think we see a lot of positive things happening for our communities in the general world. We obviously see some negative things as well, but what we are seeing now as well is sort of allies stepping in and sort of doing some of the good work as well. It's not solely reliant on our community members to do the slog, to do the hard work. So that's a really positive thing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things happening. Like I said, this we've already got some sort of good work happening in the workplace. The health sector is quite aware. So I do think the sporting
Mm.
sector will be sort of a big sort of obstacle to overcome in the future. And I know that there is a lot of sort of research happening, especially when it comes to trans and gender diverse people participation in sports. I know data will be coming, and it is looking like it will be sort of saying don't worry, don't panic. It's nothing to fear. Like it's going to be safe. It can be inclusive and safe for everybody. So I think once we have that data, that will definitely help. One other thing that I'm sort of personally keen to see be developed is some inclusive practice in terms of customer service. So we're trying to launch some training that will be targeted towards retail and hospitality team members. So I think there's a real element still of uh, real sort of like gendered language and sort of a binary gender experience when it comes to shopping. And you think fashion, for example, like changing rooms, for example, in a shopping center or a shop, are still very much or can be quite like this is for male and this is for female. And that just seems a little unnecessary as it's not really a requirement. So it can still be safe whether it can be all gendered. And I have seen recently, actually, some, I can't remember what shop it was particularly. Actually, I can, it was Cotton On. So apparently, they are
Mm,
launching all gender changing rooms, which is a really positive step. But even
yeah,
just getting people, I went for dinner the other night and I was referred to as Sir. And whilst I have a cisgender experience, it's still just sort of made me sort of just irk a little bit. I was like, oh, really? Like, am I a sir? Like, is that really required? So the sort of old-fashioned politeness to retail and hospitality still exists, and I just think it's, it doesn't come from a place, a malicious place at all. But at the same time, there are ways that you can still be polite. But just actually be more inclusive and not be so sort of divisive when it comes to sort of different binaries. So that's one hope that I have for the near future is this sort of like training around inclusive practice in a customer service type setting and how that would
mm,
actually really impact, be a really positive impact,
yeah.
especially for the trans and gender diverse community.
Yeah, so that experience of misgendering or pronouns or things like that, what I sort of try and do with when you know it's not deliberate, is not to embarrass the person if you need to say something about, oh, look, if you don't see somebody like me very often, either use the pronouns for which you observe, or better still, just don't use any, just be generally polite, But I found that if you berate somebody for using, you know, older fashioned style language or misgendering, then in a sense you create somebody who's almost permanently an adversary and not an ally.
Absolutely. I mean, that whole sort of approach, what's that old adage around sugar versus vinegar? I think there's, yeah, definitely a way, and that's the way we sort of approach a lot of our training. Like we don't go into, judge or, and certainly don't go into make, any sort of assumptions. And that's basically what we want the learners to do as well, is to not judge and to not make assumptions. So just to sort of go in and gently take these people on this journey so that they can sort of understand that, yes, actually, know, there is a difference between sort of a diverse sexuality and a diverse gender, and and sometimes they can overlap, but sometimes they actually don't. And sort of taking people on that journey, and we use like, a lot of color and pictures throughout our facilitated training and our e-learning training as well. And so we sort of make it sort of as fun and as bright and as well, to use your word earlier as well, so just make it as optimistic as possible. Like it's not a difficult challenge to overcome. It's actually something with a few simple changes and a little bit of extra knowledge, a little bit of extra confidence and comfortability, and you can actually make a huge difference to someone's life with some simple interactions, some simple conversations, and yeah, if you're by not misgendering and not using some gendered language, etc., you can actually make a huge difference to someone's day. And I genuinely believe at the end of the day, that would actually make everyone really happy.
Here in Victoria, we've just recently held a summit with the state government on LGBTQ plus strategies that the government would like to develop and implement over a longer period of time. What's your experience with other state governments doing that sort of strategy planning and therefore the provision of training, as it were, from going forward?
I think there's some positive steps being taken. So me and my team, we don't specifically deal with state governments. ACON as a whole would sort of do more work in with those types of direct relationships. But we do get approached by different sort of government organizations or departments as well. So, for example, we're actually just doing some work kicking off this financial year with the Federal Circuit Family Court of Australia. So we do find that different departments are definitely wanting more training and are sort of making the effort and making funding available for this type of training as well. So I think I can see a real positive step in that acknowledgement that it's required and that it's a really good thing. And there's definitely more money becoming available for it, which is really, really good. But I think in general, there's a really there's a general understanding that education and training is the answer and is the key. I've often said that, there's that old adage that curiosity killed the cat, but I honestly believe that curiosity could also save the world if we all just embraced it a little more and just increased our own sort of general knowledge and general awareness when it comes to different minority groups or something that you're just generally not familiar with. That extra level of understanding is only going to lead to extra compassion and empathy towards those types of to different people and different groups, and the
So
LGBTQ plus community very much falls into that.
that's a nice, really good way to round out the conversation on that very positive sort of note that you've had. And Kent, I'd really like to thank you for joining me in a conversation about what pride training is and its impact and optimistic view of the world going forward, as well as where we are at now. So thank you very much.
Well, no, thank you very much. It's been lovely to meet you and lovely to chat to you. And I'm always happy to talk about training and learning and education, especially when it comes to LGBTQ plus communities. But yeah, I hope that yeah, we'll have the opportunity to cross paths again. And yeah, if you're interested, let me know and I'll enroll you in some e-learning.
I will do that. And my guest tonight has been Kent Hildred, of National Program Manager of Pride Training. And I'm Greg McGeary. Thank you for watching Bent TV.